Welcome to Canucks Last Week, where I try to cover everything Canucks hockey in a shorter amount of time than it took for the population of Tampa Bay to know who Brock Boeser is. What an all-star weekend for him, the MVP of the NHL All-Star Game, winner of the accuracy shooting contest, and he came home with a cool $500,000. His performance over the weekend and seeing the support that Vancouver fans gave Brock really shows how much Boeser means to the fans of this city. In what's been such a dark time for Canucks fans, where we've been the laughingstock of the league for a while, we now have a special player within our midst. This is a guy who is now known league-wide, and for example, when I'm playing Chell with my friends in Toronto, and when I get stuck with Vancouver after hitting random 3 times and then hitting suicide because I don't want to play with Arizona or Buffalo, I get stuck with Vancouver. When I have Boeser with the puck and about to shoot, my friends actually get worried just because they know how good of a shot Boeser has in real life. Part of that is because I never shut up about Brock Boeser, but they also see the highlights on Facebook and NHL.com of Boeser getting lucky against Matt Murray and stuff like that. But I mean, when was the last time the Canucks had a player that just exuded offensive threat whenever the puck was on his stick? Not since peak Sedin's. I'm so happy for him for his performance at the All-Star break, and I'm really glad he's wearing a Canucks uniform. He's the type of guy you can build a contender around. I'm not going to talk too much more about Boeser in this video, since yesterday I made a video about Brock Boeser and Matthew Barzal in the Calder race. If you want to check that out, link will be on screen and in the description. In last night's Colorado game, Bo Horvat had a very strong game, and the Triple B line, when reunited in the third, looked dominant, and you should leave that line together and figure out the rest of the lines. That's how Brock Boeser is going to win the Calder. The season has been entirely about Brock Boeser, and even more so when Bo Horvat was out for 6 weeks, but Bo is a special player in his own right. He's got that do-whatever-it-takes-to-win factor, and he's just dedicated on improving. At first, when he was coming into the league, he improved on his skating, and now he's one of the fastest players in the league. And that's not an exaggeration. Last year in the NHL All-Star competition, he was one of the fastest skaters. This year, when he was injured in the 6-week span, apparently he was watching a lot of hockey tape and looking at the different traits that top players have and seeing if he can incorporate some of those traits into his own game. I don't want to put a ceiling on Bo Horvat because I think he could just break through it. He's that good and he's that motivated. If we can find a center that pushes Bo down to the second center, or it's like a 1A, 1B situation, we're going to be in a very good spot. Troy Stecher also had a very strong game last night, and his skating ability really allows him to be in the right place at the right time to break up plays and then transition back the other way. Now, I don't think he's going to be a bona fide number 3 defenseman. He's 23, about to turn 24, but going into the future, I think he's a very good piece for us to have as a number 4 and number 5 guy. So now let's talk about the direction that management is wanting to take with this team now that the trade deadline is less than a month away. There was a great interview by TSN 1040 where Linden, and I'm paraphrasing, said that they need to stay the course of direction, there's no quick fix, and they have to keep building through the draft. As to where Matt Zakaris, one of the radio hosts, brought up the good point that they are now in year 4, and sure, it's totally fine to say that there's no quick fix. There was no quick fix at the beginning of their tenure, but you're now in year 4 and we're seeing this team still on the decline. There's a kind of cognitive dissonance here, as well as when Benning took over the team back in 2014, before the 2014-2015 season, he believed that this core was good enough to where it would just take a few quick, easy retools and they would be back to being competitive around now. But they aren't. Their direction up until last year's trade deadline, when they moved Alex Burrows and Jannik Hansen, has been try and hopefully win now while still walking that line and rebuilding for the future, which are two opposite things. I truly don't believe you can do both. If they truly meant building through the draft since day 1, they wouldn't have sent picks away for the likes of Lyndon Vey, Derek Dorsett, and Eric Goodbranson. If they didn't believe in quick fixes, they wouldn't have gone out and signed Louis Eriksson, traded for Brandon Sutter and Eric Goodbranson. This rebuild should have started when they took over, but instead it feels like it started last trade deadline, and now coming up for this trade deadline, it feels like we could have a Dan Hamhuis 2.0 situation. It doesn't sound like they're truly willing to build through the draft, as it sounds like they aren't willing to trade guys like Thomas Vanek and Eric Goodbranson for futures. The recent Goodbranson news is a yikes. This first tweet here by IMAX set Canucks Nation ablaze, and you hope it's posturing, you hope he's just talked just so that the bidding war in a Goodbranson trade increases, but it's Jim Benning. You honestly don't know, and a lot of times what he says is what he does. In the second IMAC tweet here, I see where Benning is coming from. Yes, this team lacks toughness, especially with Dorsett out of the picture. Boeser got hit by Lewis and no one really stood up for him. Not that I've really seen Erik Goodbranson stand up for people, but I understand where you're coming from, but that's where you use the fourth line, $1 million guy, like maybe Darren Archibald, give that man a chance. Zach McEwen, someone like that who costs considerable less amount of money than Erik Goodbranson does and isn't taking up a top 6 defenseman spot on a team whose defensive core isn't the strongest, to say the least. Thomas Vanek needs to go as well, even if it's only for a 5th. Jason Botchford had a great point where at this point in the season last year for the Detroit Red Wings, Vanek had more points and a better points per game, and Ken Holland was only able to get a 3rd round pick and Dylan McIlrath back for him. Now, I get that he isn't valued come playoff time, but I think he's a guy that for the cost of a 4th round pick is worth it, even if it just gets you into the playoffs. I'm looking at you, Los Angeles Kings, with a team that isn't that deep on wingers. But I can easily see this management team unwilling to trade Vanek for pennies on the dollar, especially if the Sedins retire next year. Regardless, there's dissonance between what Linden is saying and what the Canucks are actually doing, and that needs to change. So that's gonna do it for me. End of rant. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please let me know by leaving a like, as it really helps me out knowing if I'm doing stuff right or wrong. And if you're new to the channel, please consider hitting subscribe and joining us on this wonderful Canucks journey, mixed in with a little bit of prospect stuff. And yeah, I will see you guys next time.